Hello there, good morning, and welcome to today's morning update from the People's Progressive Party Civic. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and I'm joined this morning by Joe Hamilton, a candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic, and Zulfikar Mustapha, Executive Secretary of the PPP. Zulfi, Joe, good morning, and welcome to the program.
Hi, Eddie. Morning, Zulfi. Morning. I haven't
Mo-
seen you a long while.
Good morning,
Morning.
Eddie. Morning, Joe. Good morning to your listeners. I'm happy to be in this program here this morning.
All right, the CCJ is expected to make its ruling tomorrow, Wednesday. But what we have seen over the past few days or so, um, an increase in the attacks, efforts to bully persons who are by the APNU of AFC, of course, who were, in their view, are deemed to be persons standing on the side of democracy. We see this starting from way back when the observers, the international observers, took a stand against the Mingo attempted fraud. Attempts were made to revoke their accreditation and to have them out of the country and so forth. But we've seen in the last few days an increase in the attacks against persons who were standing on the side of democracy. I'm going to start with you, Zulfi. Your thoughts on what is happening currently as we await the ruling of the CCJ.
Okay, first of all, I want to say the attack has not started only after the election. The attack had started since the no confidence motion. Since the no confidence motion, we have seen that everyone who who speaks about the no confidence motion and the constitution, we have seen that this APNU AFC attack them personally, attack their characters, and not only in Guyana, but around the region and the world. Coming back to the elections, after they would have tried to rig the election, and we've seen a number of false results that they have brought out. It started in the Ashmi building, coming on right through to the end of that Lowenfield figures that he had submitted. We have seen that they have started their attack on those observers who have spoken against them. For people like, for example, the former Prime Minister of Jamaica, Bruce Golding, the former Prime Minister of Barbados, Mr. Owen Atta. We have seen they have spoken out against the Carter Center. And everyone who dared to speak about democracy, everyone who said that the election was credible, but the count for Region 4, or the tabulation for Region 4, was false. The number was concocted. They have started an outright attack on those persons. So much so, we have seen the recount. And the person who's leading the coalition, I know for a fact that Guyanese today doesn't have any credibility, or he doesn't have any credibility in our country today. That is Mr. Granger. He has said that he will abide with the recount figure and the CARICOM report. And we have seen how he have reneged. We have seen the attack on the Barbados, the present Prime Minister of Barbados. We have seen the attack on the Prime Minister of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And we have seen the attack on other officials around the world, the US Secretary of State, because these people are calling for democracy to be upheld in our country. So this is the situation in our country here today. We are seeing that these people are desperate. We are seeing that they want to steal a country. We are seeing that they want to go into government by fraudulent means. We have seen that the results of the election that were declared by the statement or the statement of poll and the recount match figure to figure. Because of that, the world have said that the APNU, AFC, they have lost the election. Now it's 4 months and about 5 days, they are still hanging on to power. This matter now is engaging the CCJ. So attacking the CCJ and the judges from the CCJ is nothing new for these people. They will continue to attack anyone who wants to preserve and uphold democracy in our country. Their means, they want to ensure that they remain in government by fraudulent means. They want to ensure that they remain in government to continue the big life, continue the corruption. So they feel that they are the only people who have character in this country or in this region. So we have seen the vile attack on the judges and on the Caribbean Court of Justice is nothing new for us, nothing new. They will continue to attack. The Caribbean Court of Justice is the apex court of our country. That court is there to interpret our constitution. And we have reached there because of the action of this present de facto government. They have flouted our constitution since the no confidence motion. They have flouted our constitution when they appointed an illegal chairman of GCOM. The CCJ was there to interpret our constitution, and they pronounced that the chairman was appointed unconstitutionally. They pronounced that the no confidence motion was validly passed. And I am very optimistic. That the court will pronounce rightfully this time again, and democracy will be upheld in our country.
Joe, I bring you in here. Your thoughts?
Well, the thing is that, as Zulfi said, you have a president who has no credibility whatsoever. For that matter, there are many names and phrases people have utilized to address Mr. Granger around the Caribbean and the world. But if we go back to the third term case, as they call it, Richardson, these same people applauded the Caribbean Court of Justice about that ruling, and they didn't see anything wrong at that time with the Caribbean Court of Justice intervention and involvement in Guyana affairs, as they call it, and they didn't scream about the issue about sovereignty. Today, they do that, and that is how this cabal operates, including its leader. Now, I have said just yesterday on another program, made the point that the attack on judges and the judiciary of any country is reminiscent of how the mob operate. That is how the mafia bosses, they operate, intimidate courts. And so for me, Granger is not a sanctimonious gangster anymore. This is how gangsters operate. What they do is, once they have a matter before the court, they do everything possible and necessary to intimidate the judges who are hearing the case and who are to pronounce on the case before them. So this is not politics anymore. This is beyond politics. The other important issue yesterday with those protest activity, if you want to call them that, is my understanding is, my information is that Mr. Aubrey Norton, if you note the last week, Eddie and Zulfi, you would note that he's the point man in the last week around directing the ACNU AFC activities. And that is so because he has put before Granger and endorsed by Granger and the PNC executive the 1997 playbook of creating instability to force negotiations by the PBP and the international community. So this new thing that you see happening, and Aubrey Norton is the leader of this part of this failed strategy, because it cannot work, will not work. The PPP will not be bullied, cannot be bullied. So that's the first point. And the international community, I'm sure, and all of us are aware, they know how to deal with bullies. And Granger is just a small bully. We have had big bullies. Saddam Hussein was a big bully. He had one of the largest army, I think the sixth largest at the time. And his finality was in some hole somewhere. They found him. We can look not so long ago, Sudan, Bashir. So the point is, the man at Pearl is a small bully in the scheme of things. The world has dealt with bullies. And so no one will be bullied by Granger and his cabal. We're at a point where an election declaration must be made, will be made. And the same tactics you see applied the days leading up to the CCJ ruling, I can predict that the same tactic will be applied very shortly on the chairperson of GCOM. The attempt to intimidate and to bully GCOM from making a declaration, which is the only declaration that can be made. That is the declaration from the results that came out of the election and confirmed or reconfirmed by the recount exercise that all and sundry swore to uphold. So all the tactics they're utilizing, some are known, some are unknown. It will not create the conditions to allow for Granger to assume office legitimately. That can't happen. He has lost the election. Any imposition is an illegitimate government. Any imposition is a government that will be faced with harsh penalties and sanctions, and the realities that will come down heavily on Granger and his cabal and the families and cronies and associates. So the week of March 2nd, that was their opportune moment to have this illegal president sworn in. Once that passed, the game is over. So they can delay it for some more days, but the finality of this matter will be where Irfan Ali will be sworn in as the president of this republic, and the PPP will be in government. That is how this will end.
Just before you continue, I just want to add, Eddie, something that you said, and that is the recount figure. The recount figure, as all of us would have known by now, the Ghana Elections Commission, the commission that was mandated to carry out the recount, have instructed this chief election officer already to use the recount figure to prepare to prepare the seat allocation for the various parties that contested the elections. So that's an instruction already that were given by the chair, because the commission decided that they will use, legally they will use the recount figure. That's the legal figure to use. And no one, as the commission concluded when they sent that instruction to him, the commission does not have power to invalidate anyone's vote. The commission is not a court of law. And as such, no one individually or the commission have that power to invalidate anyone's vote. And it clearly, the instruction clearly also stated that only the court, the high court with an elections petition, can look into those issues. Right? So they will continue, as I said, and as Joe rightly said, that anyone, the whole world is against APNU AFC. Only they are by themselves now. They have lost 2 local government elections convincingly. They have lost the no confidence motion. What they expect to win an election? How they can win an election? Right? They expect a miracle to people vote for them. So they want to continue in office by fraudulent means. So I am just want to reiterate that point, that the recount figure, GCOM has already decided that they will use the recount figure to calculate the number of seats for the various parties.
And further, Zulfi, following up from what you just said, one of the APNU AFC commissioners, no other than Vincent Alexander. When the recount was being done, he was asked a question about what is his expectation about the recount report. And he said that he only envisages and sees the recount tabulation being utilized for the purposes of the declaration.
Right.
So he said that. Even before the CARICOM report was submitted to the chair, and as Zulfi rightly said, the chair adopting the numbers in the report that was submitted and the instructions given to Law and Field to prepare the final report based on the recount results that was presented to the commission.
I want to take you back, both of you, back to the issue of sovereignty, because this has seemed to be the tune of the APNU AFC for the longest while. And this is whenever things are not going in their favor, they always raise the issue of sovereignty. We have had cases where the foreign minister in the past would have said that the CCJ, if you can recall, the CCJ has absolutely no authority to hear a matter from Guyana because Guyana is a sovereign country, totally oblivious of the fact that the CCJ is Guyana's final court of appeal. But one of the coalition's very own, Carl Greenidge, would have warned just recently that you cannot mix diplomacy with party politics. And he has basically said to them what they were doing is destroying Guyana's relationship with the world when they attack leaders, not only in the Caribbean, they've attacked the Commonwealth, they've attacked the OAS, the ABCEU countries, they've attacked individual prime ministers. And he would have warned that what they were doing was basically hurting Guyana's relations with these organizations and countries.
Eddie, I agree with you. As I said, that these people, they don't care about the future of our country. All they are interested in is to hold on and maintain power so that they could survive and continue the corruption that they started in 2015. That's the main aim, to continue the big life and the good life for themselves, you know, and the perks. Because they feel that if they come out of government, the time is too short now that the run-ins got cut. You understand, so to speak, that is the road language. So we have seen that when our matter went to the ICJ, our matter, as you rightly said, the Foreign Secretary said that we will need support. We will need support around the world. And these people have picked fight around with all the countries, as you rightly mentioned, the OAS, about 35 countries, CARICOM, Commonwealth, the European Union. So that's almost the entire world they have picked fight with. And not only country that doesn't have any major contribution to make, but big countries like the United States, Canada, ABCE countries and things like that. So they don't care. They want to maintain themselves in power. That's the main thing. And they will continue to attack, as I said, anyone who wants to be on the right side of the law, who wants to ensure that democracy is upheld in our country. That they want to, they will continue to course, and they will continue to attack. Vile attack, personal attack just to demoralize people that they want to, that they are doing. Yesterday, they tried to organize, let me be very frank, they tried to organize some protests, some forms of protest. I believe Joe referred to it earlier, but it fizzled out because their own supporters now, their own supporters are not believing them. Their own supporters know, they know that we have, the PPP Civic have won the election. They know that the PPP Civic have won the election. That is why they are not getting any traction around, right? Because their own supporter now they are seeing them in a different light. It's a different light. So they are in the APNU, AFC, they are on the verge of destruction right now. They're on the verge of destruction. So they will continue and they will talk all kind of language, right? So they will attack the CCJ, they will attack the International Observer, They will attack international agencies. They don't care because we as a country, we can live by ourselves. We is not an island by ourselves. We can survive by ourselves. We need support across the globe for countries to support us, not only in the diplomatic field, but other fields to help us economically. So, and we need it more now than ever, because right now in Guyana, people are suffering and we need help. We need help. The economy is down. There's no job creation. People are out of job. Thousands of people since they took office. Over 40,000 people have lost their jobs. With the pandemic that we are experiencing right now, people are actually starving. And we need help. We need help not only from the private sector and the business community in our country. We need international help. And these people are damaging our international reputation across the world.
Joe.
The same arguments the cabal they're making here in Guyana about sovereignty is the same argument Maduro and his crew making in Venezuela. And if you follow just last week, the Venezuela head of the government, they met and they discussed the border issue, and that is published. And the vice president made the same argument, and they wrote the UN making the same arguments. That listen, Venezuela is a sovereign nation, and it only responds to its constitution, and therefore the ICJ has no authority to adjudicate over the matter regarding the border we have with Guyana. So Granger and Maduro are in the same company, but it is dangerous for us, as Zulfi said, because let us assume Venezuela continue with the same line of argument, and they decide to roll tanks over the border. How do we argue sovereignty then? How do we seek assistance from the same people who we're cussing out on the organizations? And therefore, Carl Greenidge, in his wisdom, was making the point that the best defense we have is in the diplomatic arena. And if we burn all the bridges, then we would be exposing ourselves to be taken advantage of by Venezuela regarding the controversy that we have. So it is really ironic that you have the same arguments being made by the cabal, being made by Maduro and his crew, who is trying to take 5/8 or thereabout of our country. And we in Guyana, we have to recognize that you do not utilize arguments just to suit specific occasion, and that is what they're doing. I see all the likes of the David Hines and all of them, and Nagamutu and all, writing and speaking and basically attempting to predict and preempt and to instruct the CCJ, because I see a letter from David Hines. He basically attempting to instruct the CCJ how they must rule, because any other way they rule according to him is a constitutional coup, as he said. When the party is supporting and the man he's supporting, they're attempting a coup. They're attempting a coup because all and sundry knows that the elections, it was won by the People's Progressive Party Civic, and Irfan Ali is deemed the president because his list garnered the most votes. And so I would agree with Zulfi that they will continue down the line attacking people. But that will not work, cannot work, because the world would not be bullied by Granger and his cabal. And Zulfi, again, is right. Their interest primarily is to hang around government, is to protect themselves and protect their enrichment. And in some measure, a lot of them want to protect themselves from going to prison because they see staying in government would allow them not having to face the law and the full brunt of the law. So they have no interest about Guyana and its people and the present condition we face, a failing economy, a bankrupt treasury, a public health crisis that is upon us. All the other countries in CARICOM and around the Caribbean who have had to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic, most, if not all of them, they have flattened the curve. Most of them have suggested that they are free of infection of persons with COVID-19. In the case of our country, our persons are being infected more in Guyana. Our infection rate is increasing. It has increased more than 100% in the last 4 weeks or thereabout. A month ago, we had 116 persons infected in this country. Today, as I speak, the last number is 257. A month ago, we had just about 8 persons who died from COVID-19. Today, we have 100% increase. 16 persons have died based on the report. And so that failure is happening in this sector that is very detrimental to our people. And what is important to note, when the pandemic started, the death rate among people in Guyana, it was among primarily elderly persons. Today, in the last 5 persons that have died, 4 of them are young people. The teacher is 26. The guy from Bartik, the businessman, he was 36. The man from Albois Town, he was 42. And the person from Linden, less than 40 years old. So you see what is happening. Our young people who we will depend on for the future to develop this country with their skills, if we don't get an angle on this pandemic, it would decimate our people. And therefore, what is necessary outside of the economy struggling, we need a legitimate government that can access help, as Zulfi was making the point earlier, that can have access help both for the economy and the pandemic and for our people who are suffering. Some of them are unable to eat. That is the present condition we have. Whilst these people are attempting to hang on to government, their own supporters are being decimated via the pandemic and via starvation. And I have had cause to say, and I'm sure Zulfi would have experienced it, where known persons, supporters and members of PNC and the coalition who have made contact with PPP leadership to help them with masks and food and that kind of thing.
And we did.
I'm saying that not to condemn the people, but I'm saying that in the context of these people who want to continue to use these people for their machinations, but when they need them, they fail to deliver service to them. We have had to help, and they refuse to do that. So that is where we're at, and the Guyanese people want this to end, regardless who they voted for. They want this to end. And Zulfi, let me quickly say, I agree with you that the protest activity, if you want to call it that, fizzled out.
Damn squib.
But that has made the game plan people more desperate. And my understanding is that their next attempt at protest, they will attempt to do protests in communities that predominantly support the People's Progressive Party. to attempt to stir up trouble. We hope the Commissioner of Police and the police force, they're paying attention. We hope they're doing their work. And we hope that the information that they have before them, they will execute a plan to deal with it. Because, Mr. Commissioner, you will be held personally accountable for any harm or danger that comes to the Guyanese people and their property. Because if you're doing your job, you have enough information to know that the PNC APNU cabal is trying to stir up ethnic strife and is trying to create instability in this country.
Quickly, I think we have just a few minutes more, but I want to take you back to the whole issue of the bullyism and the intimidation of persons who are standing on the side of democracy, and now that has been extended to the Caribbean Court of Justice. And we have seen the calculated attempt by the APNU AFC to use the press and to have lawyers talking, trying to give opinions on the outcome of the case, and also to try to somehow operate as though they're sending a direct message of to the CCJ of how and they should rule. This has forced even the Bar Council to come out and caution persons not to try to influence the ruling of the court and to not speak to the matter. But despite all of these attempts of bullyism, of trying to influence the court and trying to hang on to power by all means, the international community seems very firm on its position that they will only support a peaceful transition of the democratically elected People's Progressive Party civic government. We saw only recently a letter written to Mr. Mike Pompeo by one member of the U.S. Senate, talking about supporting his position, Pompeo's position, for the transition of the government, and even offer his support to Mr. Pompeo to ensure that Guyana transitions smoothly to its new government.
Well, Eddie, as you rightly said, first of all, this government, or this de facto government, we are seeing the desperation. They will use all means. And we know basic principles is that when a matter is in the court, especially lawyers, they should not go venture out and talk anything to influence any decision in the court. That's a basic principle in law. As a layman, I could say that. So that was out of the limits of those lawyers that went and tried to influence the decision of the court. The desperation we are seeing, as Joe rightly said and I said earlier, these people will want to do anything to remain in power. Even if they threaten the entire population in this country, they don't care as long they can remain in office to continue their fat life and continue the corruption. And this brings me to the point where they think that they would not get sanctioned, that people talking. But this brings me to the point with the congressman's letter to the U.S. Secretary of State. He reiterated the point that he's willing to assist. He's willing to assist to ensure that Guyana democracy is upheld in Guyana. He said that. He said also that he's willing to assist if there's sanction have to apply to Guyana. He's willing to assist in any field. And I think that if this government, if this de facto government go against the will of the Guyanese people, if they go against the result of the election, sanction will be imminent in this country, not only from the United States, but other countries, other influential countries, other countries that normally assist us in almost all sectors, economic sectors and other sectors. So if they continue, the future of our country is bleak.
Eddie, they leading off from what Zulfi said there just now, the same Congressman Posey, who wrote the Secretary of State, immediately he wrote Granger yesterday. And let me just read the first paragraph of his letter to Granger. He said, "Dear President Granger, my letter of June 5, 2020, and he was talking there about the letter sent to the Secretary of State, made clear that in democracies, election belongs to the people. Frustrating the outcome of an election frustrates the will of the people and erodes the reality of democracy. CARICOM community observers have now confirmed the results of your nation March 2nd election. The will of your people is made evident, and the transition to the duly elected government must now begin." So there are two things. One, the diplomatic and international community, they're speaking about the declaration of the results, which must be that the PPP won the elections. And secondly, the transition to the new government, that is the PPP government, must begin. Any other thing, the world will not accept. Any other thing. And therefore, what is facing us is Granger taking us down a path where we will have difficulty in recovering because of the heavy load that this country will have to fetch via sanctions or releasing this country to breathe. And if you note the letter, when you all have time to read it, you will see the congressman is not speaking about GCOM. He is indicating that, listen, you're responsible for any tragedy come to this country. That is Granger. He has not mentioned anything about GCOM and its obligation. He's saying, listen, every issue about this election is already clarified and certified. All that is left now is for a transition of government. And that is where we are at the moment. And we are prepared and ready and waiting to get into government so that we can give service to the Guyanese people, because as Zulfi said earlier, these people are so much caught up with attempting to rig an elections and to lie to the people, they have no time to give service to the Guyanese people. And it's no service at all they're giving. Examine all the areas of government, and you have no service being given to the Guyanese people. So we need this to come to an end, and we hope that by next weekend, immediately after the CCJ ruling, and let me say this to viewers, however and whatever the CCJ rules has nothing to do with GCOM and the declaration. As Zulfi said earlier, GCOM and the chair has already resolved what the declaration is expected to be. And they have instructed the chief elections officer to prepare your final report that deals specifically with the allocation of seats based on the declaration and the results that came out of the recount. That is where we're at. And we hope by next weekend, this matter comes to an end so that the Guyanese people can breathe and this country can move forward in its development and economic trust. So Zulfi, it looks like we're left here continue until our host return. It looks like we're left here. Somehow this is something that we have to resolve urgently in government. It's the issue about telecommunication.
Yeah, I agree fully.
About like the program is happening here and you just fall off.
Yeah.
Earlier at my location here, I was having difficulty with connection, and I'm sure you would have experienced that
all over the country.
at your office all the time, and therefore we have to urgently bring this monopoly of GT&T to an end.
Yeah.
We have to urgently do it.
I just want to make one last point, Joe. As I said, and I want to agree what you said earlier, and in your final statement just now, that I am very optimistic. We have seen where this government, when they went and appoint an illegal chairman, the CCJ upheld our constitution, said that the chairman was illegally appointed. We have seen when they went and they tried to say that the no confidence motion was not properly passed, the CCJ reiterated the point and said the no confidence motion was validly and constitutionally passed. And again, and once again, we have seen they are trying to hang on to power illegally, and I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that democracy will prevail. Democracy will prevail. I am very optimistic also. The CCJ should not bother with the vile threats, because they will not be in government. The APNU AFC will not be in government, the future government of our country. We'll have the PPP Civic as the future government, with Dr. Irfan Ali as the next president, as you rightly said. And we are very optimistic that very shortly that Dr. Irfan Ali will be sworn in as the next president of our country.
Viewers, let me end. I suppose I have to end there for Eddie and for Zulfi and myself, saying thank you for watching our program. Thank you for listening. And we continue program during the day with other comrades of the People's Progressive Party Civic. And we thank you for your support. We thank you for every day that you struggle with us to ensure that our country ends this matter with democracy and not dictatorship. Zulfi, have a good day.
Thank you.